the second part of my top 100 games of all time for 2016. This episode, we're going to be going over number 90 through 81. And as in the last episode, I'll be giving a little short one-sentence clue as to what the game is before I actually show it. If you want to play along, pause the video and try to guess what game I'm giving you. But today we're going through 90 through 81. Pretty varied list again, but let's get right to it. In at number 90, we have a very punishing game, a dice and card co-op that's based in a popular miniatures universe. My number 90 favorite game of all time is Space Hulk Death Angel, the card game. This game is a little bit under the radar. I know that I've heard people talk about it before, but it just doesn't get a lot of love. What Death Angel, the card game is, you might have heard of Space Hulk, which is a bigger board game where one player takes control of a bunch of space marines going on a mission, and the other player takes control of aliens trying to stop them. This is a smaller version of that, and fully cooperative, where the players are all controlling space marines going into a ship, an abandoned ship, and trying to finish a mission, whatever that might be, of going against the aliens who are trying to kill them all. The game plays very easy, where you have a row of cards that is your space marines walking through hallways. You're fighting aliens. You'll walk into a room and have different things in that room, like computer terminals or a hive of aliens that you need to destroy. What makes it very interesting and I guess replayable, but also very frustrating, is that the game is extremely hard. There's a red die in the game that you will come to hate, because it is just so hard to roll what you need to kill the monsters. You also have to roll to see if the monster hits you. You will lose this game far more often than you'll win it, but the game is very interesting and very fun to play, because you don't feel like you have no chance. You definitely feel like you can win this game, and it has a very interesting, unique sort of hand management system, where the way that you activate your Space Marines is by playing cards, but you can't play the same card twice in a row, 2 turns in a row. So if I attack this round, then my Space Marines can't attack next round, and I really need to talk to my teammates about what we're going to be doing. That way we can make our actions work the best they possibly can. So my number 90, this small cooperative game that packs a lot of punch and is very hard to beat, Space Hulk Death Angel, the card game. At number 89, we have a worker placement dice game with an essential expansion. My number 89 favorite game of all time is Kingsburg. Kingsburg is a worker placement game, so you're placing workers, pieces out onto a board to do actions, but in this game your workers are dice. And this was one of the first worker placement games with dice that I had ever played. It is a slightly more common mechanic now, but one that I hadn't seen before I played Kingsburg. You're placing your dice onto the board, you're getting resources, you're getting all those resources so that you can build buildings. You have a player board that has buildings on it, you're building those buildings to make your actions better, but also to fend off, at the end of every year, there's an invasion, and everyone has to be able to fight off that invasion or they take penalties. What I meant about the expansion is that there's an expansion for this game called, I believe it's To Forge a Realm, and that expansion is definitely essential to this game. What it adds is, the most important thing, I think, to me, is it adds expanded player boards with more things to build. In the original game, you only have about 5 rows of buildings you can build. In this new one, you have like 7, but it also has unique abilities and buildings. Each player can have unique boards that make them different from everyone else. I definitely appreciate that in games, when you can feel differently from other players. You have other things that you excel at that they don't, and they have things they excel at. It also sort of fixes a little bug with the combat, with the end of year invasions. In the original game, it could come across as kind of lucky. You had this dice roll where the king would send reinforcements to everyone, and if that roll was really high, and I spent a bunch of time building army, then my army is kind of useless, because now everyone has a bunch of defense and no one's really threatened. In this version, in the expansion, you can play with this, a new module where you actually have tokens for military that you can bid, and you can only use them once, but that's how you augment your military. So you don't have to go military, you don't have to build a bunch of buildings that make you defensive. But if you do that, if you ignore the military buildings, then you need to spend these tokens, which can be worth points at the end of the game. So definitely think the expansion is essential, but with the expansion, it makes my number 89 Kingsburg. At number 88, we have a co-op with an underutilized real-world theme. My number 88 game of all time is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. As I noticed with my first 10 in this top 100, I have a lot of co-op games near the bottom, and I think that's because I used to play a lot of cooperative games. As I've played more and more, I've started going towards other types of games, but cooperative games have made up a large part of my time in the hobby. So it doesn't surprise me that I have a lot of them on my list, and Flashpoint's a very good one. I do really appreciate the theme of it. There's not a lot of games about firefighting, about this sort of real-world thing, and I think that makes it sort of approachable for people. It makes it relatable. We all can understand this theme, whereas people can't necessarily always get behind a theme of going in and fighting orcs and goblins. I think everyone can sort of, even if they don't get excited by the theme, they can be, they at least can relate to the theme of going into a building to save people. And that's what you're doing in this game. Everyone has different abilities that really make them feel like a useful part of the team. The person who has the ability to save people better, that's their job. They are going in there to run out. They're running out, they're grabbing people, and they're running out of the building. The person that is good at putting out fires is sort of watching everyone's back. Very nice pieces, very nice board. The fire feels dynamic in the game. The fire is spreading everywhere, and you never know exactly where it's going to pop up next. Very interesting. I say interesting a lot. I don't know. It's just my adjective of choice. But a very cool, very engrossing cooperative game that surprisingly plays a lot of people, up to 6 players, and I think works well at that number too. So Flashpoint Fire Rescue, my number 88 favorite game of all time. At number 87, we have yet another cooperative game that heavily mixes Euro elements into a story-rich game. My number 87 favorite game is Robinson Crusoe. Another cooperative game that is very difficult to beat. Cooperative games need to be difficult because otherwise why are you playing them? If you can beat it every time, it becomes boring. This one is definitely not boring. In the base box, there are about 5 or 6 different scenarios that you can play. I've played probably 2 or 3 of them, but multiple times. And each of them is very different. In this game, you are playing as characters who are stuck on an island. The very basic scenario, the one that I've played most often. It's just the basic story of Robinson Crusoe. You're stuck on an island, you need to make a signal fire, before a certain amount of time in order to be saved. While you're doing that, you're also trying to build a shelter to protect you from the elements. You might have to go out and hunt to get food and pelts. You can sort of invent items such as like shovels and maps in order to make your job easier. You're exploring the island, finding new terrain that lets you build certain items that you need certain equipment for, certain elements to be able to build. But what this does that I really like as a cooperative game is that it does have those Euro elements. At its heart, this is a worker placement game. And everybody has 2 workers that they can send out to say, okay, I'm going to try to explore, and I'm going to try to make a shovel. And when it's my turn, I do those things, but there's also a chance that, maybe I hurt myself when I'm trying to make the shovel. I cut my hand, and now later there's going to be possibly something happens because of that. Maybe my hand gets infected or whatever. I go out exploring, and I get lost. Or you can spend all of your actions, both of your actions, doing the one thing. And if you do that, it's more safe. I spend more time exploring, so now I can find my way back easier. Or I spend more time making the shovel so nothing bad happens. I don't break it or I don't hurt myself doing it. But that takes more time, and time is so scarce in this game. You're trying to get everything done by a certain endgame point. So crazy unique implementation of Euro and cooperative games. And that's what has kept it around for me, is just that mixture. Of a very heavy story-themed game where you are going through this deck of cards and things that have happened before will come up to bite you again, mixed with a game that is very grounded in Euro mechanisms. Definitely a game that I keep playing, and one that I will keep playing for a while, and that is Robinson Crusoe, my number 87. At number 86, we have a Yahtzee killer dice game that is fast, easy, and mass market friendly. My number 86 favorite game of all time is Qwixx. Mass market friendly because I actually bought this at Target. It's out there. It's not something that you have to necessarily go onto a specialty website or a specialty store to find. Quicks is a surprisingly fun game. Obviously, it made it this high on my list. And essentially, all you're doing in this game is rolling dice and marking a sheet of paper. It can play. It says in the box up to 5 players, but honestly, you can play this with as many people as you wanted, as long as you had enough pieces of paper, enough pencils. You roll a set of dice, a set of colored dice, and then everyone has a chance to mark off one of the combinations of numbers on their board. As the main player, if you can't mark anything off, then you get a penalty. You keep doing this, trying to fill out spaces on your board, but the big twist in the game is that the tracks are numbered, and once you mark a number off on track, you cannot go backwards. So the red track, for instance, goes from 2 to 12. If I skip ahead and mark off the 5, now the red 2, 3, and 4 are useless to me. The more X's you have on your board at the end of the game, the more points you have, so it's not just a matter of getting rid of your options, it's also a matter of you're limiting your score at that point, because if I can't X off 2, 3, and 4, that's 3 X's that I can't score for the rest of the game. But the game ends quickly, and you have to weigh those risks, because if you wait too long for that 2, 3, and 4, then everyone else is scoring points and getting the game closer to the end and leaving you behind. Very simple game. It's definitely not as heady as I'm making it out to be, but the real draw of it for me is that it has those decisions in a super short game that's very easy to teach. Again, scales incredibly well and is compact. This is all. It even could be in a smaller box than this. I just very much enjoy this one as one of my go-to filler games at this point, or my go-to just bring anywhere games, and that's why I made it this high on my list. My number 86, Quicks. At number 85, we have a controversial but very popular spin on a classic cooperative game. This is one that I actually don't have the box for with me because it's over at my parents' house, and this one is Pandemic Legacy, the new number 1 on Board Game Geek, on the Board Game Geek rankings. Pandemic Legacy has been a huge hit. If you've listened to any sort of board game podcasts, board game videos, you have probably heard of this one. It takes the classic gameplay of Pandemic, where you are scientists and doctors going out and trying to cure these diseases, but makes it a legacy game in which things are permanently changed. As you're playing the game, you're putting stickers on the board, you are sometimes tearing up cards, you are adding new cards and new rules to the game, you're permanently changing things as you're playing, writing on things. And what that does is turn that very simple game of go out and try to do our best and solve this puzzle into a story game. A game where you are trying to solve that puzzle. The gameplay is essentially, in a lot of ways, the same. But it adds this real story element where it's not just anymore, I'm the red pawn and I'm going to Shanghai and using 2 of my actions to do this. It is, I am, my character. I have named them. And when we play this again, I am going to try to protect my character, because there are certain things that maybe will cause you to your character to become wounded or something. And I will sometimes make decisions based not on winning the game in the most efficient way as, protecting my character, because it is, if I become wounded or if something bad happens to me, it can be a permanent change to this character that I've built. Very visceral game, a very involving game that really gets everyone talking about it. I don't, obviously, it's my number 85. I don't rank it as my number 1 game of all time, and that's largely because of problems that I have with doing this sort of very heavy story-themed game in general. I just think that there's always going to be a push and pull between telling a story and making a good game. And if you want to hear more about that, you can listen to our podcast where we reviewed the game. But I do obviously rank it very highly. 85 is not a bad ranking for this one. It's just not number 1. But I do definitely really enjoy this game, and I have memories from it, which is the big thing. I have memories of this game in particular with my brother and my mom, who we played with, and that's very important to me. And that's why it makes number 85 on my list of all-time 100 games. At number 84, we have a tile-laying game, which gives you the chance to build the home of your dreams. My number 84 favorite game of all time is Castles of Mad King Ludwig. So this comes from a system of games with these tile-laying sort of mechanisms, and I may have another one higher on my list. But Castles of Mad King Ludwig sees you building a castle. You are buying tiles and adding them into your castle. The castles are all kinds of things such as orchestra rooms and bedrooms and kitchens and gardens. And the way that they fit together is where a lot of the theme comes in. I'm not going to say it's a very, very thematic game, because when it comes down to it, you are putting these tiles on the board, trying to score the most points. But a lot of the fun of the game comes with taking a picture of your castle at the end and seeing this crazy layout that you've built that makes no sense, that makes no real-world sense. Why would you want to have this room next to this other one? Why would you make it, impossible to reach the kitchen? But I very much enjoy games that have a wow appeal to the final product. I like being able to look at the table and see that we've done something. And this game definitely does that. I also very much enjoy the other core mechanism of this game, which is price setting. Every round, one person is the master builder who is taking the tiles that are available and then sorting them from cheapest to most expensive. The ideal thing to do would be to make the tile that you want cheapest so that you can get it for the least amount of money. But whenever anybody else buys a tile, they buy it from you. They pay you the money for it. So ideally, you would sell things to other people for the most money they're willing to pay for it so that you can get the most back. So the second guessing comes in from, how much do I think that they're willing to pay for this? If there's a tile that I really want, I don't want to pay that much for it, but if I make it too cheap, then somebody else might buy it. I love that sort of double guessing, double think, trying to get into other players' heads in a Euro game like this. I really, really enjoy that. And so I definitely like this game, I think, mostly for that mechanism. But the tile laying and the scoring of the rooms in your castle is also very intriguing. And I very much just enjoy this game, Castles of Mad King Ludwig, my number 84. At number 83, we have an underrated game from a company that's now red hot, Gang Warfare in Space. My number 83 favorite game of all time is City of Remnants. Platinum Games has gotten a lot of popularity recently with games like Dead of Winter and Seafall and Ashes. This was one of their early games and is really one of my favorites from them, and one that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should. In this game, players are... it has a weird sort of theme where an alien race has sort of taken over and put a bunch of different alien races into almost like a ghetto, and humans are one of the races, but there's also other alien races who are all living in these sort of rundown areas of this alien world. They're kind of refugees, and in order to survive and thrive, gangs have formed of the different people. So there's a human gang who is sort of trying to run their own black market, and there's gangs of the other alien races. Meanwhile, these alien overlords are sort of the police force in the settlement. And in this game, you take control of one of the gangs, and you are on this board trying to go out and build your businesses, your areas of influence that will give you maybe you can make an area that gives you contraband that you can sell for money. Maybe you will make an area that gives you more defense. The thing that is really amazing about this game is, for one thing, it's a great combination of elements. It has on the board movement and combat. It has deck building. Your gang is a deck of cards, and as you buy more gang members or recruit more gang members, they go into your deck of cards. It has engine building and resource management as you're building these contraband making places on the board and using them to generate money for yourself. Lots of ways that you can go about winning, and every gang has a different specialty. One of the gangs really wants you to do combat. One of the gangs is really good at making money. And you can win doing each of those different things. Too much really to go into here, because I don't want to explain literally how to play the entire game, but City of Remnants is a really underappreciated game that does a lot of things really, really well. And I don't know of other games that do all of these things together like this one does. And that's why it stayed in my collection. I feel like it's one of my sort of diamond in the rough games that I appreciate and other people haven't really gotten on board with yet. But it is a fantastic game, and my number 83 favorite game of all time, City of Remnants. At number 82, we have a super thematic cyberpunk take on the two-player card game. My number 82 favorite game of all time is Android Netrunner. Now, I don't get a ton of time to play these two-player games. I think there's going to be a few other ones on my list, this is one that I very much enjoy, but not one that I've really had the time to explore the way that I probably should. Because this game has a lot of nuances, a lot of intricacies. The thing that I love the most about it is that each player is playing a different side. One player is the runner, the hacker who's trying to get information, and one player is the corporation, the big brother sort of element that is trying to protect their information from the hacker. And whichever side you're playing, you play very differently. The hacker or the corporation has cards in their deck, the scoring cards in their deck that they're trying to score and they're trying to protect from the runner. The runner has no scoring cards in their deck. They're trying to steal the corporation's scoring cards. Even the game, the play area is set up extremely differently. It's a hard game to learn. I printed out some player aids to make it easier, but it can be a very hard game to learn just because there's so much terminology. There's so much. It's so different. And you have to teach them how to play their side while you're playing the other side. So it can be just kind of a weird thing and it's hard to wrap your mind around. But once you do, this game offers just a ton of interesting and fun interactions between cards. There's a lot of different ways to play. Even in the base box, there's a lot of different there's different runners, different corporations, and they play differently. As the corporation, you can win by scoring enough cards. You can win by killing the runner, by doing enough damage to them. So making decks that work off of those different things, you can try to tailor your deck to your specific play condition, your win condition. This is definitely a game that I don't play enough, one that I really find fascinating, and if I did play it more, maybe it'd be higher on my list, but as of right now, it sits at number 82, just based on how unique it is and how much potential there is in the game, and how much fun I have playing it. So my number 82 is Android Netrunner. At number 81, we have a cutthroat negotiation game with one of the most unnecessarily awesome accessories in gaming. My number 81 favorite game of all time is Nothing Personal. Nothing Personal is a straightforward negotiation game. I guess I can't really say that. There's quite a bit of take that in the game as well, but it's one of the just most pure backstabbing and wheeling and dealing games that I know of. As the players are trying to essentially take over control of a mafia family. The board has the hierarchy of the mafia, and you are taking turns sort of playing cards that let you place out influence on different gangsters in this family. When you control different gangsters, you get different abilities. Each gangster has a special ability. The spot they're in has a special ability. And it gives you the opportunity to control those things. You can play cards that let you steal control of somebody away from somebody else. At the end of every round, based on who you control, you get points and you get money. You can threaten people with cards. You can make all these different kinds of deals. The accessory that I was talking about is a ring, an actual metal ring that the person who controls the Don is supposed to wear in this game, or at least hold on to show that they're the one in control. Crazy amounts of interaction in this game. The entire game hinges on interaction. This is definitely a game where if you are playing with the wrong group, it's not going to be good at all. But if you are playing with the right group, a group of people who really want to, go at each other. I remember playing this at BGG-Con with a couple of our listeners to the podcast, and I kept trusting, our friend John he would make a deal with me, and I would trust him with it. I would pay him, whatever that we agreed on to do something, and then he wouldn't do it. And after he did that twice to me, I learned. But it's just you do that sort of stuff. That's what the game is, and you have to have a thick enough skin to be able to handle that. But if you can, the game definitely pays off. The one problem I have with it is that it is a bit too long. In the normal game, you're supposed to play about, I think, 3 full rounds, and it has rules for the first game you play. It says play 2 rounds. And I've always played it 2 rounds because it does get a bit long, even at that 2 rounds, even at that length. So going to 3 just isn't something that I always am going to want to do. But as far as negotiation games go, this is one of the best. I love the variety of powers. There's a ton of gangsters that you're only going to see a fraction of them every game, and so just endless replayability. And if you're playing with a good group, there's not a lot better than just having your friends in the back over at board games. So, and nothing personal lets you do that. And that's why it makes my number 81. Well, that's it for this episode. That was my number 90 through 81 of my top 100. I hope you enjoyed this. We have a pretty eclectic compilation of games here. Some cooperative games still, but moving into some other different kinds of stuff, and even Quicks thrown in there. This small dice game amid all these heavier games. I hope you'll enjoy seeing the rest of my games when we come back with 80 through 71. So until then, see you later.